We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to This Song Is Yours, the podcast where we chat with songwriters and musicians about the art of songwriting and the stories behind their music. I'm your host, Simon Fink, and as always, thank you for joining us. Our guests today on the podcast are the Swell Season, the acclaimed folk duo of Irish singer-songwriter Glen Hansard and Czech pianist and singer Markéta Irglová. Since forming in 2005, they've captured hearts worldwide with their emotive songwriting and cinematic storytelling. Their music soared to fame through the 2007 film Once, earning them an Academy Award for Falling Slowly and eventually inspiring a Tony-winning Broadway adaptation. After releasing their second album Strict Joyin in 2009, Glen and Markéta pursued solo paths, leaving the Swell Season on pause. But today, they're reuniting with Forward, their first album together in over 16 years. It's a record that balances evolution and nostalgia, delivering the raw honesty and beautiful melodies that fans fell in love with from the start. In news that makes me incredibly excited to say, we've got both Glen Hansard and Markéta Irglová on the podcast today to chat about this brand new record. We talk about the passage of time and how they found their way back to creating music together, recording the album in Iceland, and the almost communal living arrangements that they shared with their families in the process. We also chat about the lasting legacy of Once and what it feels like to head back out on tour behind new music. We want to say a massive thank you to both Amanda and Dave for their help with today's episode and remind everyone that Forward, the brand new record from the Swell Season, is out today. There are links in the show notes where you can purchase the album and check out all of their tour dates. While you're in the show notes, please be sure to follow us on our social media channels and subscribe to this very podcast. It all helps us out and keeps you up to date with future episodes and all of our incredible guests. Now, we're not going to keep you any longer. Here is our conversation with Glen Hansard and Markéta Irglová of the Swell Season. Please welcome to This Song Is Yours, and I can't believe I'm actually saying these words. It is Glen Hansard and Markéta Irglová from the Swell Season. To both of you, hello, welcome. How's it going?
Good, Simon. Thank you.
Hi, Simon. Thanks so much for having us.
My absolute pleasure. It is an honour to have both of you on the podcast today. In support of a very exciting new release that's coming out into the world. When people are listening to our conversation, it's going to be out for them to enjoy, for them to listen to. It is a brand new Swell Season record called Forward. Firstly, congratulations to you both on this beautiful new record. I imagine that it must be a bit of an exciting thing. I know both of you have continued to release music over the years in many different kind of capacities and many different outlets, but I imagine that there's a bit of excitement around a new Swell Season record coming out for both of you.
There is. The years that kind of went between myself and Mara would send each other the odd song, although it remains that Mara has always been a great barometer of the quality, like the quality in my writing, and then also been off kind of honing her own craft in her own writing for all these years. And so when I was sitting in Mel's diner a couple of years ago and just missing Mara, and I sent her a message and just said, do you want to do some gigs? The reason I said you want to do some gigs is because that's usually the best way for musicians to actually see each other again, is to do a few shows together. So it's kind of so we did a little tour in America, had a really nice time, and the creative spark was there. So I remember hearing a couple of songs Mara had written and asking her, maybe could we go into the studio and sort of see what happens. And so that was the kind of the beginning of this chapter.
I absolutely love that. I think that there's a lot of anticipation from fans? I know that we've spoken to a number of people here in Australia and a number of people worldwide about the fact that we are being graced with another Swell season record. I'm curious for both of you. Maybe, Markéta, I'll start with you for this question. Obviously, the success of the band is known world over. There was the Oscar win. There was the music that you both wrote and composed turned into a musical. I believe there was also an infamous Simpsons appearance from the two of you. So I think that it's pretty safe to say that the success of the music of the band kind of resonated with people worldwide. Coming back together, and obviously it worked very well in that live setting, but putting songs to tape, was there any I don't even want to say apprehension, but I guess was there any nerves or kind of thoughts of how do you follow on, or how do you move, not to put a pun on the title of the record that we're working with, but how do you move forward with such a big legacy behind you?
Yeah, well, I felt like when we used to work together, Glen and I, it always felt like, all those years ago, I mean, it felt to me like there was Glen, there was me, and then there was something other there, in the equation. Like I never knew what to call it, whether it was just the music or just some sort of energy, but there was an otherness to the collaboration that I sort of especially noticed when we went our separate ways and I was working on my records or other things. It highlighted just how special that sort of whatever that energy was. And over the years, I've kind of thought about it, when people ask me, it's quite a common question. Why do you think the film was so popular? Why do you think Falling Slowly touches so many hearts, And I always put it down to whatever that other thing was, whether it was, again, I don't know what it is. It's a presence or an energy or just something that isn't me or Glen, but we're just like, it comes sort of through, and it comes out of the collaboration and out of our sort of energies meeting. And that's the thing I wondered most about, like, will it be there, because I always put the success down to that energy and that magic or whatever it was that made our music like something more. And I think like that's the part you can't control. It's like the muse or something. You can sit down with an instrument and write a song, but what you don't know is if that feeling that you're kind of seeking in it is going to be there. And I wondered whether it would be the same, would it feel the same to collaborate together like all those years ago. And I was so I don't know if relieved is the right word, but I was so glad that when we started working together, I felt it again, and it was familiar, and it was old, but it was new as well. And I was just like, okay, once that's there, I trust the process, and it doesn't matter. Like I'm not going to try and necessarily be in control of it or try to come up with a certain type of results, because the energy is there, and that's I want that to be in control. So personally, for me, once I felt it, I knew that whatever we were supposed to create, we would, and that we were only sort of so much in control before the music would just kind of take over. Did that make sense?
100% it does. 100%. Glen, was that the same for yourself, I guess, in approaching starting that new chapter of the Swell season?
Yeah, it was. There was no apprehension for me. I knew that because we have kept contact through the years, I knew Mara's effect on my music. I knew when she said, because sometimes when you're close to someone, all it takes is, I like that song, or no response to a song that you send. All it takes is that to know exactly how they feel about it. So that kind of creative connection was still very much alive through the years. But when we did get back together to and we went into the studio, I was like, yeah, there it is. There's that thing. There's that familiar trust. And it takes a lot to trust someone enough to have a bearing on your song. It's like, but I know Mara's music and my music, that the music Mara makes on her own versus the music I make in my own solo career, they're kind of, it's not a million miles away from each other, but there's definitely a difference. There's definitely a kind of a difference in kind of I suppose the approach of it. And I guess I've always been coming from I grew up on the American songwriters, but then I guess I kind of got into more rock and roll, and just I like things to feel a bit kind of loose and a bit thrown together. And Mara's thing through the years has become kind of even more beautiful and, very specifically, shaded and, very, very nuanced. Whereas I kind of feel like as the years have gone on, I've gotten looser. And looser, probably the wrong word, but looser in its needing to be. And so when we came together, it was just a lovely kind of meeting of the two of us bringing what we bring to the table, except this time Mar brought 50% of the songs. Whereas in the past, it would have been kind of, I guess, me carrying the creative load a bit more and Mar being very much in a supportive role and that's kind of how we met, is Mar was in a supportive role to my songs, and it was really powerful. It was really powerful for me because although she was in a supportive role, she was also in a dictating role, because when she added her spirit and voice to my song, the song was transformed. It became a different, like I'd spent 18 years in a rock band with a bunch of guys, and and then when I played with Mar, suddenly something flowered in my song that I had never seen before. And I guess, for the want of a better term, it's the feminine. And probably that's exactly the term. And so it brought such a huge amount to what I was doing. And it actually meant that I could be more masculine, ironically, because the feminine side I could trust was there and it was covered. Whereas, so I could actually be more myself and Mar could anchor it in her spirit. And I think that's where it felt to me like everything went in the writing of the songs and the songs themselves, everything went a bit further and became a little bit more, everything was a bit more high contrast, if you like, energy wise in the songs and lyrics wise and meaning wise and all of that.
Well, I think it's audibly, you can kind of hear it across this brand new record. I think that although it is still the sound of the Swell season, we're not kind of venturing into death metal or hip hop territory. It's still very much in that same similar ballpark. It's a thing of that you can tell that this is not a revisit or kind of a nostalgia kind of trip. You can tell that this is that next chapter, that steps forward, that it's that there's an evolution in the songwriting between the two of you as well. I think that there was some very interesting different kind of arrangements played across the record. I know that, as you kind of said, Glen, that both of you brought 50% into the songwriting of this record this time round, and wondering how that then played from that previous dynamic. I imagine that obviously that there's still elements of how when you first met and wrote some of those original songs that's still in your mind somewhere, or memories of those are in your mind somewhere. But writing songs on this record, what was it? I think 100 Words. It's a gorgeous song. I thought that kind of did a really lovely job of, again, sounding like it's this new stage of the Swell season. Wondering what it was kind of like discovering those sonics and making sure that it wasn't a retread or a revisit, or that you guys felt that you were kind of doing the band justice.
I guess we started with what we do best, which is sitting with our instruments, the piano and guitar, and our voices, and excuse me, and sort of charting the songs up, seeing where we want to take them structure-wise and what the lyrics are about. And we had a couple of sessions like that, maybe a week long each, where we kind of threw a lot of ideas. We had like so many songs, maybe 20 that we were sort of considering for the album. And it wasn't until the third session where we had kind of settled on which songs we wanted to focus on. We had decided that it would be 8 songs that would probably make the record, and we kind of chose those before inviting a band to lend their instruments to the bones of the songs, which had been the piano and guitar. So the center is that, as it has always been, and the so much of the rest is kind of the musician's own expression, I suppose, and their own ideas and kind of sonic aesthetics, like Joe Doyle, which plays the bass and has been a member of the Frames and has been playing with Glen on all his solo albums and tours. He came over and played, and he's a wonderful bass player. And he has his own sound, absolutely, and so does the Piero, our drummer, who is kind of the new member of the Swell season, if you like. And he has very particular drummer as well. He's very kind of, organic, kind of loose, percussionist drummer. It's a beautiful sound that he kind of brought to the record. And then there was the familiar sound of Maria and Bertrand, which were the string players that had been on our first record and wrote all the arrangements for all the Once songs. And it was wonderful to get them in the studio again, because there's such a creative spark and spirit that again, they brought so many ideas and kind of their own choices made the songs what they are so much. So it's a combination of whatever we kind of are drawn to together, plus all the other musicians that were invited. And there weren't that many. We had some guest musicians that did long distance kind of collaboration, like the horn players, they're Glen's friends that recorded something from where they were and sent it over. And there's like a little bit of marimba on one song, but more or less it was the five of us in the studio. And then there's the whatever the producer choices are from Mia, who was the engineer and producer, but he always just kind of tried to make the instruments and what we were playing sound as kind of true to what they would sound like in the room. I think that he wasn't trying to overproduce it in any way, so I think it just kind of sounds really warm and kind of but yeah, there wasn't like a clear intention of like, we never sat down and discussed how do we want this record to sound. It just kind of ended up sounding the way it did once we started playing the songs.
I kind of love that, though. I imagine that there must have been a certain, I want to say almost like electricity or chemistry that was in the room when you kind of reunited all those previous band members and kind of had everyone back in the studio together.
I think so. I think we were genuinely excited to be working together. It was a nice setting to kind of meet and make music in our home studio, and we were old friends, so we were hanging out. There was a lot of conversations, fun. There were kids running around, so it was kind of this familial setting as well. We were eating good food. We were hanging out, and then we were making some music. So it felt very organic and joyful, the whole creation. Like, we were tired by the end of it for sure, but I think the process was very enjoyable and flowed really easily. There was no kind of, I don't think there was any time wasted, or there wasn't any kind of time spent on discussing anything. We were just kind of doing it, and I think that's the best way to not have to overanalyze what we're trying to do or what it needs to be. It's just, you just kind of let it be what it is. I think that comes across the best.
I think that there's something really special about, even in preparation today, I guess researching for today's interview and kind of looking at some different press for the record and reading a few different things and listening to the record as well, which we've been lucky enough to do before it has come out today. So thank you for that. Is, as you mentioned, it was almost kind of, I imagine that not every single band gets the opportunity to almost bring all their families together and live in almost this kind of, I don't want to say commune, what's probably the best word to use, but you've got your family there. I believe it's in your house just outside of Reykjavik, Markéta, where the album was recorded. For both of you, what was that experience like, being able to live and breathe and not just for yourselves? Because usually sometimes the studio can be a bit of an isolating experience, having your family close by and prioritizing both studio but family and, I guess, normalcy for the families and people involved as well.
I mean, historically, for me with Frames, I remember back in 1999, about 2000, we hired a house in Kerry. The idea was that we would just go spend 2 weeks down there. There was a big enough house that we'd all have our own room. And that a couple of people had to bunk in with each other, but that basically we would just play music all day and we'd put no expectation on it. And so it was a very creative time because the band were cooking together, they were eating together, waking up more or less the same time, going for walks on the beach. Like, it was a very powerful time. And so this model, I think, works really, really well. I mean, I'm actually thinking about the Australian band, the Tropical Fuckstorm, and Gareth Lydiard, and they all live out in I believe it's an old speedway. They live in like a house together, the whole lot of them. And there's something incredibly creative about that energy and about being in the same space together. So when we talked about getting together and sort of recording some songs, me and Mara, and sort of let's see what happens, the obvious choice was to go to Mara because Mara's 3 kids, and she's going to be very busy, and she'll be the one who's got the most restrictions on her time if we try to get her to New York or try to get her to Dublin or London or whatever. So we thought, well, why don't we? And the studio that she lives in is amazing, and Mio's an amazing engineer, amazing producer. So why don't we just go to the studio in Iceland? And plus, it's Iceland, so let's go to Iceland, where there's a certain frequency up there. I can't describe exactly what it is, but there's a kind of a frequency up there that's very attractive to the creative process. And also, what was really special, we were there with our families and Christy and Myra, but the volcano was erupting, and so on the horizon every morning we were looking at a fire the size of a village, shooting up into the sky, and it was just like there was something incredibly magical about that time being there, and there's something bracing about the cold. There's something about huddling in, and Mara was dropping the kids to school, picking them up, making lunch. I mean, Mara's mother come over and then helped us with some of the meals. So we were eating amazing Czech food, prepared in a beautiful studio in Iceland. It was just kind of heaven, to be honest. Everything about it just worked. And then the creative thing, you're just allowed to wander upstairs and record at any time you want, and then come back down and watch an episode of Ted Lasso. I mean, it was just, everything about it was very, very loose,
That, I think, I know you just used the phrase, it was kind of like heaven, but all of those together just sound like the most perfect kind of environment, I guess, for being creative and for being able to allow things to happen organically, which I think you can hear on this record. I was hoping I might be a little bit self-indulgent and ask about one of my favorite tracks on the record. I found myself revisiting the track that I believe is maybe for those fans who really loved the music of the Swell season from the self-titled EP and from Strict Joy, that this is the bridge for them for this new record. I really loved I Leave Everything to You. I thought that was a gorgeous song, beautifully, like the fragility and the tenderness of that song, just absolutely heartbreaking. Wondering if you, one of you or both of you might be able to talk to where that song came from or how it ended up on the record.
Well, during one of the sessions, I believe, yes, it was the session where Myra and Christy were there. So it was the second one. We had been recording some music, and I had the previous day, I had a kind of an idea that was rolling around in my head, and I was looking forward to getting a chance to sit at the piano and see what that was, because I could feel there was something there. And so when we had a little bit of a tea break the next day, I sat down by the piano and I just kind of see where this idea, what it was, and a whole song came out of that, like with the lyrics and everything. And I was kind of sat there by the piano for a little bit, sort of blown away how I couldn't believe how quickly it rolled out. It was almost like, there was a piece of paper with all the information, and all it took was kind of flattening it out on the table or something. It was just finished. And I asked Mio to record it. He always had the mics on anyway in case we were working on something. So, and he's used to that anyway. So he recorded it, and he bounced it out. We went to the kitchen downstairs where Glen and Meyer and Christy were sitting, and we just played it on the speakers in the living room. As a, like, hey, you guys want to hear what we recorded? It might be something, it might be nothing, but let's check it out. And it somehow it just touched all of our hearts in the moment. I think, like, considering what the song is about, and all of us being kind of, parents to our kids, and like thinking about the future and about the past and the present, and just kind of whatever you're leaving behind as a person and for them. And it just kind of seemed to resonate with all of us in this kind of a level that was hard to ignore, I suppose, in the moment. So it became something that what seemed like a nice moment to have, and I didn't think that it would end up on the record, because it seemed like the way Glen was hearing it was just like, don't touch it, leave it raw, exactly how it is. It doesn't need anything, don't add anything, just let it be what it is. And I thought, well, yeah, well, then it can't be on the record, If I was hoping Glen could play on it and sing on it with me, and he was like, no, just have it be what it is, and it needs to be on the record. So yeah, it became one.
For me, it was just that moment. Mark came down the stairs with Mio, and it was middle of the afternoon, I remember. And I remember when they played it, just going, oh, wow. Like, this is so moving. And it's so moving, and it's so, and it did reflect a conversation we had been having the night before. We had been having all of these, because at the end of the day, and I hope it's okay to say, Mar, but at the end of the day, Mar would have a special moment with her family where they would watch, one episode of a show, Brooklyn 911.
Brooklyn 9.
Okay, and so they would watch this every night. But then once the kids had all gone to bed, Mio and I might crack a beer, and before we watched an episode of Ted Lasso, the three of us would just sit there, or the four of us, or the six of us, depending on. And we just had these chats, and these chats, I think, were kind of, even though we're just mates hanging out, I think they were very informative in some of the songs. I remember the song that when Mark came down the stairs with "I Leave Everything to You," it somehow had echoed a chat that we'd either had the night before or the night before that, but something that was kind of in the air, and it blew me away how, I don't want to sort of, literal is the wrong word, but the way Markéta is able to live life, and then a song is born out of that conversation or born out of that experience. And whereas I feel like I'm much more abstract in the way I write. I tend to write towards ideas or towards truths, but I don't tend to kind of grapple it to the ground and hammer it into the floor. I tend to let it come at me the way it comes at me and whatever. Whereas I find with Markéta's songwriting, she can be so specific. I leave everything to you. The lyric from top to bottom in that song is very, very. It's straight. It's straight talking. It's basically, it's what Joni Mitchell said about great songs. She said, just rhyme your life, just live your life and rhyme it, and that's your job. And that's what Markéta is really, really great at. And so that song, I remember when I heard it, thinking, now we have the centerpiece of our album. The album is built around this song. And please don't put any strings on it.
Well, I'm glad that was listened to, and it is an absolutely gorgeous song on an absolutely gorgeous album. So I do want to say congratulations to you both for the record. I'm really excited for people to hear it. I know that there is, as I said, there's a lot of people who absolutely love and hold a special place in their heart for the Swell season. So I think this is going to be a beautiful kind of addition to that discography and for people to continue their journey with the band. I'm aware that there have been a number of dates across Europe and the UK. I believe that you're about to start a US tour sometime soon, or I think there are some dates on the horizon. I do have to selfishly ask, and I do apologise, but may we see you revisiting our shores down here in Australia at any point, maybe next year in the future, in support?
100%. Yeah. I mean, there isn't a plan to do it. There isn't something that's on the cards, but I absolutely don't see why not. We should probably go back to Korea. We had great success with the film in Korea, and we played a couple of concerts down there that were really amazing. Brazil, and I'd imagine, I would love to think that we could go back to Australia, and that people would remember us, and people would be interested in hearing that music again. So, by all means, it'd be great.
I don't think that there's anyone. I don't think you'll have any issues in selling tickets to those shows. I'm sure that myself and a friend saw you, I think, back in 2009 on the Australian tour when you came down. So I know there'll be plenty of people still very eager to see you. Glen and Markéta, we usually kind of wrap things up asking our guests what they're currently listening to. I might go Markéta first and then Glen will finish with your recommendation. But is there for yourselves anything that's on high rotation or that you are loving listening to at the moment?
Well, a friend of mine just got a record, my friend Emiliana Torini, who is from Iceland, and she became one of my closest friends there when I moved. So she just released a record I've been listening to quite a bit. Otherwise, I have to admit I listen to very little music, actually, because I work so much in the studio, and then I'm around my kids that have like their own sort of soundtrack, going on at all times. And I grow very tired, sort of, with the sonic sort of situation in my life. So I'm not a very there's not a lot of music that I listen to, and if I do, it's usually something calm. But yeah, Emiliana Torini and her new album for sure.
I absolutely love that. Fantastic voice from Em. So yeah, very great recommendation. Glen, what about yourself? What are you currently listening to?
Can I say two?
Of course.
Good. Thanks. There's a band. Well, first of all, there's the Gareth Lydiard from Melbourne. I listen to his solo record a lot, but there's a great, and I tend to get really into one song. There's a song on the new Tropical Fuckstorm record called Standing on a Rake that I just play over and over. It's just this beautiful, strange, meditative song about loving someone and about basically saying, I'll be your island when you're washed away. It's basically just a love song, but it's just so very much in his style. I just love him. And then the other record I'm listening to a lot is a young band a young guy from Ireland who's living in Vienna, but his band is called the Belgian Blue. So he's Irish, living in Vienna, but the band's called the Belgian Blue. And they have a record called Summer Sweeps that I'm actually just listening to it all the time. It's just something about the writing is just so familiar to me. It feels familiar in a way that's just really warm in my heart right now. So I know those guys are only starting out. I don't even think they have a record deal, but their record's on Spotify, and it's really special.
Look, I'm very excited to check that out. We'll be having a listen after our conversation today. But
great.
In the meantime, I do want to say a massive thank you to both Glen Hansard and Markéta Irglová. Thank you both very much for coming onto the podcast and chatting about this brand new Swell season record. It is called Forward. It is out right now. We'll make sure there are links in the show notes for people to follow the band, purchase the record, all the fun stuff that they have to do. But thank you both again for your time today.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you so much, Simon.